Hello everybody, it's Maria here from Pepperly Rose Paper Crafting. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in Sydney, Australia. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm going to be featuring from now on videos that are more budget friendly, that uses as little materials as possible. And the reason being is this. Because of the current climate as it is with the coronavirus and people losing their jobs, like in Australia, for example, we have about 1 million people that are out of work. And those who have also had to change things around, they're no longer working from home, things like that. Not no longer working from home, but who have limited cash around. Spending money on hobbies such as stamping and card making can be very, very difficult. So I thought today there's no reason we cannot enjoy our hobby, and if we do it smartly we can actually have really good results. So from now on my videos generally will be about card making on a budget with using very little supplies as possible. So today I'm going to be featuring the stamp set Patent Poppies. If you're interested in buying this, and I know it's not easy for everyone to buy these things, but if you're interested and you have the cash and you the means, you can always purchase this through my online store at pepperlyrosepapercrafting.stampinup.net. But my main focus is really to try and do something new and fun without paying huge amounts of money for this kind of a project. So as I said, this is the stamp set we're featuring today, and I'm going to be featuring these two poppy flowers, and we'll be featuring some vellum today, some thick whisper white cardstock, which is half an A4, and then I scored it in half again, and that I will burnish with my bone folder. And what you will need is rubbing alcohol and a Versamark ink pad, and ink pads are colours of your choice. The reason why I'm featuring alcohol, rubbing alcohol, is I want to do a fun technique with this vellum and make a background that looks like alcohol ink without actually using alcohol ink. So I did try it before and this is the result I got, and I think the result is beautiful. And this is with just using water and the re-inker, and it really warps. But with alcohol, the vellum doesn't actually warp as much. And the vellum I'm using is the Stampin' Up cardstock vellum, which is fantastic. So you'll also need a piece of basic black cardstock as well. So we'll get started on this. The first thing I'm going to do is put on my craft sheet. This is a silicone craft sheet. It is heat resistant and you can use paints and what have you, and it's a multimedia kind of a mat, so it makes it fun. So with this, what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to use some gorgeous grape ink, and I'm just going to stamp it on my mat, on my craft sheet. And I'm using Mango Melody as well, so I'll just do that over there. You don't need large amounts, so this makes it very economic. And I'm using a bit of lovely lipstick, so this will be my palette up here. You'll also need an aqua painter. So what we'll do first is we're going to drop some alcohol directly onto the vellum. Oops, I spilt some. A bit heavy-handed, but you can easily pick it up with your vellum there. Now a little bit of colour has come off there, so that's okay. So with my aqua painter I'm going to have some water here, and I'm going to pick up some purple and I'm just going to splotch it on, and this will make it move around like alcohol. Then just bear with me, I'm just going to get a tissue and I'll be back. Some tissue. So this is gorgeous grape, so I'm just going to drop it in just random, and as you can see it moves. It's a great colour, it moves like so. Then I'm going to wipe off the gorgeous grape, and I'm going to put on some lovely lipstick just in drops, even with your water, and it will work out fine. And then some Mango Melody, pick that up and drop it in as well. Now to get a really cool effect, I'm going to add a bit more lovely lipstick and a little bit more Gorgeous Grape. I'm going to now just wipe off from my aqua painter the excess paint, colour, the ink, and then I'm going to grab a straw and I'm just going to blow this around and give it a nice random effect. Now, if you don't get the desired effect with the straw, you can always use your aqua painter and move it around to make it look more random kind of thing. And you can move it up into the, just get the bit of the alcohol as well, move it up here, grab some of the purple and then get the Mango Melody all over this and get a really cool effect with that. Okay, so make it look artistic, use whatever colours you want. You know, it just makes it more fun. So add a bit more purple. And it doesn't warp, it still warps, but it doesn't warp as much. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of the excess stuff that I have here on my mat. So get rid of that and then a little bit more. Wipe it down a bit more. And then leaving my craft mat on because it is heat resistant, I'm going to use my heat tool and I'll just grab that. I'll just heat it up. I'll just go from the back as well. Now, if you're not 100% happy with how this has turned out, just bear with me for one moment. I have my phone ringing. If you're not happy with the colour, you can always add more after you've given it a dry with your heat tool. But I'm going to add some more alcohol to this, kind of re-wet it a bit. And then I'm going to add a bit more colour. So I want to add, for example, some more Gorgeous Grape. So I'll just stamp onto the mat. You can use your re-inkers and just drop in some more purple, some more Gorgeous Grape. And as you can see, it kind of re-wets this again and it makes it more usable and pliable and just, yeah, does a good job actually. You can experiment with this, like there's no right or wrong with this. It does warp quite a bit, but not as much as with water, I've noticed. So that's something. I'm going to use a bit more of the lovely lipstick. And there we go, it's the lovely lipstick there. And then I'll just wipe that off with a tissue. And then I'm going to use a little bit more of the Mango Melody. So I'll just put a little bit more down here. And that just gives you a splodgy kind of a mess, but it's nice and artistic. And this is just a fun way to use your inks and a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and just get that effect. Okay, so I think that ought to do me for a little while, and I'll just splodge that in there just to flatten it out a little bit. Okay, so I'll just grab now the heat tool. So I'll just give this a bit of wipe, and then I'll just grab my wipe that all down. And I'll just use my heat tool again. Okay, so I've just finished now heating this, and it is still a little bit warm. So whilst it's warm, we can just press on it down. It does get a little hot, so just as a warning, it does get hot. However, try and flatten it with your hand, or use something heavy to kind of flatten it out. So you can use a block or something, and just kind of flatten it out as much as you can. So now this looks really cool. I quite like that. But what I want to do next is I'm just going to rub my embossing buddy all over this piece here. And then what I'm going to do is get some Versamark ink and my stamps. And I'm going to ink these up with the Versamark ink. And we're going to randomly stamp this all over. So I'll just keep adding Versamark. And it will work well with nice line images. So the sky's the limit with the combinations that you can use, I think. Just put one up there. And I'll put one down there. And I think that will do, because there's not a lot of area to cover. This can be any size. This is just a scrap. I didn't even measure it at all. I don't get, generally speaking as well, is I don't get hung up on measurements at all. I just think it's, at times it can be a bit of a burden to be overly concerned of measurements. So you do whatever you think will be right for you. Just keeping this very simple. As I said, this is just a scrap I had lying around. So I'm going to use some gold embossing powder over the top of this. So I'm just going to pour it all over this panel. And then I'm going to use that all over here. And you can make your own vellum backgrounds. So cool. Just pour it all over. So that's what that looks like with the gold embossing powder on there. So I'm just going to pour all the embossing powder that fell out of on my sheet. So it's all back in there again. And now I am going to heat emboss this with my heat tool again. All right. So whilst it's still a little bit warm, I'll try and kind of warp this back into its place. Okay. So it's still a little bit warm, so what I'll do is I will grab a big block, and I'll just grab my largest block, and I'll just make sure it's cool to touch, and I'm just going to weigh it down, and I'll just put it over here for the time being. So what we'll do next is we're going to grab a strip of basic black cardstock, and I forgot to bring a stamp set with a sentiment, so bear with me and I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I brought in the Butterfly Gala stamp set. I forgot to bring that in, but I love the A Little Note. The reason why I love that sentiment is because that can be used for absolutely any occasion. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to stamp that, and I'm going to use my block. I normally use my Stamparatus, but I thought today I'll use a block and see how I go. So I'll just put the A Little Note sentiment there, stick that on, and I'm going to use my embossing buddy and rub that across. Your embossing buddy is your best friend when it comes to heat embossing. And I'm just going to use Versamark ink pad to ink that up. And I love this sentiment A Little Note because it's very versatile. So I'm just going to put it right here. So I'm going to use my table as a guide for the line so I can imagine it. Okay. Then I'm going to use some Whisper White, some white embossing powder. So I'll just just put some embossing powder on that now. And that turned out perfect. So I'm going to heat emboss that. Okay. Just let that cool off for a little bit. I'm going to grab my little mini guillotine cutter from Stampin' Up. You can use whatever guillotine you have. I'm just using this because it's just easy. Now this is cooled off. So now I'm just going to cut a strip of cardstock there. Oops. And that's how that cut off, but I think it's a little too wide, so I want it a little bit less wide. So I'm just going to go a little bit, just cut off a sliver off. And I'm going to trim off a little bit more from the top as well, just a tad. Okay, and that looks a lot better. I like it to have a less of a border, so that's how that looks. So this has now not warped as much, so what I'm going to do is stick this to the front of the card. So I'll use it like that. And then I'm going to put the A Little Note in the middle so we don't lose as much of the embossing, and then I'm just going to cut this at an angle. So I'm just going to put this in here and I'm going to cut that at an angle. So I'll just hold that down and there we go. All done. And this will just go like that across. So, oh, that looks so pretty, doesn't it look pretty? So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use some double-sided tape. I'm using the what's this called? The ATG gun, because that's what I have on hand. I haven't bought anything else in terms of adhesives. But with this, I'd rather use a dry adhesive more than a wet one. So this is just going to go straight across here. Try not to cover up too much of that embossing, because that's really pretty. And then on the back, I'm going to use some more adhesive there in the middle. And then where there's more like solid bits, so we don't see the adhesive through the vellum, I'm going to put some there and here, and I'm going to put some there, and put a little bit more there. Okay, so there's quite a bit of adhesive there, and I'm just going to stick it to the front of the card. And it's not going to be in any particular angle, but I just want it to have it a little bit askew just to add interest, like that. And I'll just stick it down. Now this, oops, it's a bit crooked, so luckily this kind of adhesive is a bit forgiving, so it allows me to move it around. So I'm just going to make sure it's really dead on straight. That is a lot better. And that is my finished card for today. I hope you like it. It's lots of fun to add some alcohol on top of your vellum. And you can use whatever, you can use re-inkers, or you can just use your stamp pads just straight down onto a non-stick sheet. And it makes it fun. So I'm just wiping down here because it's a bit, you know, yuck there. Yeah, it's just a fun way to move the ink around without the use of alcohol inks. So I hope you enjoyed my budget series of card making with very little in terms of embellishments or the use of designer series paper. It is a very powerful thing to have a stamp set, ones with lines, and just using them in a different way that you wouldn't ordinarily use. And I think this kind of technique will look great with these butterflies as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment below this video, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. I want to thank you all for watching and for persevering with me, and I hope you all stay safe and well, and everything's okay with your family. So it's good to craft in times of when you can't move around much and you have to socially distance yourself from everybody. So crafting can be quite a comforting thing to do, and as well as it's a good idea to you can send a card off to a friend or a family member and let them know you're thinking of them at this time as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.